Okay. So what I'd like to do first is I'd like to start the way that we have been starting, which was looking at the 16 different points under the fourth consideration of the Bonatti, 146 considerations, which was the 16 different ways in which things can come to be. And those things encompass things like whether or not the planets are angular, succedent, or in a cadent house, angular 14710, succeeding 25811, cadent 36912. Whether or not the planets were placed by their own sign. Whether they were in malefic houses, what kind of aspect configuration they were in, whether they were impeded by their aspect configuration, whether they were retrograde, whether they were, so all of those particular things. Let's first do that. And what was applying, what was separating, all of those things that kind of come under that fourth consideration are all things that give us a really strong understanding of what's actually happening in the chart, right? So what we're looking at, which is a big thing that I'm interested in these days, knowing what we're looking at. So first of all, what is angular?
All right. Saturn.
Saturn, definitely, unequivocally. But
Yeah.
so are the moon, and so is Mercury, right? They're both within 5
Oh,
degrees
yes,
of the
it's
cusp,
within 5 degrees. Yeah.
right? They're
Yeah.
both within 5 degrees of the cusp of both of those angles. And that puts and also Mercury is the ruler of the fourth.
Yes.
Right, but we've got the moon in the fifth. I mean, moon in the first, and moon is the ruler of the sixth. Okay, so the things that are what do they call it when a planet is angular or succeedent? They say that planet is what they call advancing, in a state of advancement. So in this particular chart, Saturn is advancing by angularity. Remember, it can also advance by succeedent, by being in a succeedent house. The moon is advancing. Mercury is advancing. Mercury is the ruler of the house he's advancing in, right? So what else does Mercury rule? He rules the eighth. So Mercury rules the fourth and the eighth, and he's in the fourth. The moon rules what?
The moon rules the sixth house.
Okay, and Saturn rules what?
Saturn rules the 12th and first.
Okay, so this is another one of those Aquarius ruled charts, or Aquarius
Yeah.
Lagnas, or Aquarius ascendant charts, where Saturn rules both the first house and the 12th house, right? So we expect there should be some issues, right? There should be some issues with this person's life. Okay, what do we think this person? First, then okay. Our next question is, what is separating? What is applying? What is separating? So, what aspects are actually happening here?
Um, so, okay.
So,
Uh,
Timeritus, is he still with us? Timeritus, if you will let us know, if you will just put in the chat, do you know the difference between applying and separating aspects? And if not, I will go into that, or maybe I'll just do it anyway. So applying, for an aspect to be applying, right, obviously know what the aspects are, but for it to be applying, it means that a planet that is faster is in a lower degree in the sign that it's in. So basically it's about to become exact, right? But that means that the faster planet is at the lower degree and moving to exactitude. So the let's see, the order from fastest to slowest is the moon, Mercury. So be looking at this chart now while we're talking about it. The moon. So that means that the moon can apply to anybody. Mercury can apply to anybody but the moon. Venus can apply to anybody but Mercury and the moon. Sun can apply to anybody but those three, right? Mars can apply only to Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter can apply only to Saturn. Saturn can apply only to the outers. Everybody can apply to the outers, right? But I don't use them for application and separation personally. So in this chart, note that the moon, the fastest planet, is at 14 degrees of Aquarius. And note that Saturn is at 17 degrees of Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Tamaritas. All right, so there's an applying aspect, and not only is it an applying aspect, it's got a reception which is called pushing nature, right? Because the moon is in the sign of planet B and is applying to planet B. So that's actually kind of nice, because at this particular point, that means the 10th house and the 6th and the 10th are connected, right? But also we know that the moon is the co-ruler of everything, right? The moon is the co-ruler of all things, and also that she's an aspect of mind, right? The moon is an important aspect of mind. She's the non-rational mind. So there's some element to this nature that's really, to this person, that's really interested in achievement. Would make some sense, right? Or what else would you say? And Tamaritas, feel free if you're if you're feeling pretty good. I mean, this is all just to help each other. So yeah, feel free to get in there.
Okay, one thing I see is Saturn ruling the ascendant in the 12th house is in the 10th house. So is that why you said public, like and being ambitious? Because
Achievement.
and so because Saturn is also ruling the 12th house, could that mean that like hidden matters could become public? Like that's always one thing I kind of struggle with if I'm like trying to interpret a chart and I see the 12th house come up and then I see like the planet ruling it is like in the 10th. Like, does that mitigate it in any way, or does that just make what is bad kind of public or in
I
some
think
way?
I think it makes what's bad public. I think yes. I
Okay.
think that, yeah, because yeah, and we'll talk about it in relation to this chart specifically, because I think it does brings the self undoing to the public, or becoming prominent. It's what they say, where the fame is what breaks them. Where the person goes famous and they self-destruct. That's another expression, in my opinion, of how either the ruler of the 10th and the 12th, or the ruler of the 12th and the 10th.
Especially given the fact that it's with the South Node.
Well, that might give dissatisfaction. That might give a dissatisfaction that would lead us to doing things that are negative. Right. So I always think of K2 as the dissatisfaction, the thing that makes us turn away from it. Right. The things that it creates the disillusionment that makes us want to turn away. Because K2 wants moksha. He wants us to turn away from the cycle of birth and death. And so right. And so when you detach, when you're no longer attached to that. So I find that pretty much the area of life where you find K2 is where generally there's a sense of disillusionment, because K2 wants you to detach from it. He wants you to turn away from it.
So in this chart, could religion be an issue? Like issue with a faith or your belief system?
Because and why do you say Saturn? Why do you say that? Because of Saturn?
Because Saturn is in Sagittarius and is with the South Node.
Oh, I see. I don't. Yeah, no, there isn't a religious angle to this chart, and I don't necessarily connect Saturn with religion. When we've been talking lately, when we've been looking at the planets, it's really been the sun that is the religion. Now, I could see that maybe with the sun on the part of fortune there, thinking that maybe with that, or with the ruler of the ninth. But even the ruler of the ninth here is Mars, and we know that Mars is kind of represents descent. And so he usually represents pilgrimage, but he also represents religious descent. So I don't think let me look it up. Let me just be absolutely sure, because it doesn't look like it. I mean, from what I know, I would not say so. Or I wonder if there's if there is a religious event, kind of like how Bob Dylan found Jesus. I think so did George Harrison. No, it doesn't look like it. Yeah,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, good, but yeah, excellent. Right. I mean, that's what I'm basically saying. So ultimately, I would not that logic personally, I would not follow. As far for like for Saturn and Sagittarius. The other thing that we were finding was that Jupiter didn't necessarily represent spirituality, but represented piety, and that through which you're rewarded by being faithful and virtuous and pious. And so but when we see a lot of the stuff where Sagittarius equals the ninth house, and Jupiter has been we've been kind of brought into this modern era where we really do look at Jupiter as being kind of spirituality, where really the sun is the natural ruler of the soul, and the natural ruler of God, because the ninth house is God and the sun is in his joy there. So that really is kind of where that religion. Were you going to say something, Layla? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, does this person like the public thing that we discussed, like his self-undoing, becoming a part of the public, does it involve his siblings somehow or close friends?
No, not that I
Okay,
know of. Wait, let me.
okay.
Yeah, not that I know of. It does not.
Or their spouse?
Well, there is something public with. What's the other thing for the seventh house? There's spouses, but what else?
Oh,
Litigation,
lawsuits.
What?
like
Lawsuits,
open enemies, litigations, lawsuits,
litigation. That's right, lawsuits. But there's another thing I'm looking for. What's the other? What's the other thing?
wife.
Partnerships?
Not wife, because that was spouse. Partners. Did you say partners?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, yeah. This person has a partner that they got into a litigation with.
Makes sense. The moon
So
Was it
what?
a
is squaring
woman?
the moon is squaring the sun.
Oh, so what did you just say? I'm sorry. What did you say, Tamaritas?
Was it a woman that was
No,
the issue?
no, no. It was a man.
Okay,
This
because
is
I see the
also a male
moon
chart.
like close to the ascendant, so I just would wonder like if that would mean that the person is taking on like the roles of the moon, or if like that would mean that women and mother would play a huge role in that person's life.
That could certainly be. I think that that's certainly true, and there is one woman especially. There are a few women, obviously, on the love side, and there's even a woman on the professional side who plays a very, 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 very important role in this person's life. So
Hmm.
I think that you're not off at all in that particular area. It's just not necessarily, the litigation isn't specific to a woman.
All right.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so Hmm. You mentioned that we're gonna consider Mercury in the fourth house, right?
Yes.
Okay, so was the matter of litigation around some inheritance or some property?
What kind of property?
Hmm, like inheritance,
No, not inheritance.
okay, or intellectual property?
Intellectual property. Why?
Because Mercury rules the eighth house, and I mean, like it's on the cusp. It's on the cusp of the fourth house, so I kind of just, but it's still in the third, so I kind of just went from there.
No, it's on the cusp of the fourth. That's good. So now when we're looking at property, we'd be looking at Jupiter, right?
Yeah.
What kind of, it's an intellectual property. So what does this person do? What kind of intellectual property would they produce?
Mm, based on that Mercury.
No, based on the chart, period.
Okay.
Maybe something of substance because the sun is in Taurus. So is it? Well, you said intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
Um, does it deal with like maybe like this is just like a wild guess. Like I could think of Sun and Taurus, Mercury and Gemini's like writing a cookbook or something like that.
Writing, but not a cookbook.
Mm,
Yeah, keep going, keep going. So move out of the moon rule aspect of Taurus and go into the Venus. Go into the Venus aspect of Taurus.
Pleasure, Pleasure.
Uh-huh. And what kind of things bring people pleasure?
Sex.
Okay, something else. What else brings people pleasure?
When I said food.
What part of the body does Taurus rule?
The throat. The
Okay,
singing.
so
A
singing,
songwriter.
Singing.
songwriter.
Music.
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. Okay.
Ah, so it's a songwriting conflict, something like that. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So we've got that this person is a songwriter. So Tamaritis very perceptibly talked about the possibility of our self-undoing becoming public. What do we think it was the nature of the self-undoing?
Well, the self-undoing is described by Saturn, and Saturn is retrograde.
Saturn
So,
is retrograde and he's in the sign of Jupiter.
yeah. So it was something that was excessive and something that is not, something that is different to the actual nature of Saturn.
Okay, I love that. So where would we find what it is?
We're gonna, okay, yeah, we're gonna look at Jupiter.
Okay. So I think we have a few different ways places to look. One obviously is looking at the ruler of the 12th, right? One
Yeah.
is looking at the ruler of the 5th. One is looking at the ruler, the exaltation ruler of the 12th in this particular case too, and the ruler of the planet who rules the ruler of the 12th.
Okay. So the exaltation ruler of, I'm sorry, we're gonna look at the exaltation ruler, the 12th and the,
Would be
nothing is
Mars.
exalted. Yeah,
Would be
yeah,
Mars, right?
yeah, it would be Mars, Capricorn, yeah. So Mars is in the second house in Pisces. Oh, also ruled by Jupiter.
So
Substance abuse, maybe.
yes, which one?
The Mars, like when she said Mars and Pisces, that made me
So
think of the substance abuse.
that would imply which substance?
Liquid, like maybe
Like,
alcohol.
that's right. Very good. Very
Oh.
good. Very good, everybody. So all right, so that's kind of how to inch our way through a chart. What we just did, we got all the salient parts. I mean, we could, like, I just came from the Vedic room this morning where, we went through the dashas and bhuktis and all that stuff, but we got all the salient parts, really, to be honest. This is the chart of Burt Bacharach. And if anybody has ever heard of Burt Bacharach, it was made famous by Dionne Warwick, a famous singer in the 60s. And she was basically the voice of Burt Bacharach and Hal David, his partner. And in the 70s, she basically sued them. He ended up splitting with Hal David, and there was legal action between him and Hal David, and then she actually pressed legal action against the both of them later. And so let me see what I can find about that here. Okay, the marriages failed.
He was married 4 times.
Yeah, well, he was married to Angie Dickinson. He was married to Carol Bayer Sager, who was a singer, and he was writing songs for her. Yeah, he was married a lot. I know he was married at least twice. So yeah, so what about that? So why would there be so much marriage? How many times has he been married, and why would that
4 times. I think, yeah, 4 times. I see
Okay,
one name, Paula Stewart, then Angie Dickinson, then Carol Bayer Sager, and then there's like fourth one, Jane Hansen.
Okay, so let's see that. Why is there? Oh, you know what we might look at then is the part of Eros, right? I just looked at that last week, and we were
Yeah.
looking. So here I think what Tamaritas said about the moon on the ascendant, I think is really important, because this is somebody kind of entranced by, the moon represents women. And so this is somebody who's got women on the brain, right? The first house is the head. And so this is someone whose mind is kind of affected by the female. Remember, we saw Clarence Thomas's chart. It was the same thing: Aquarius rising and the moon. No, it was Capricorn rising and the moon in the first. And we could see the extent to which the wife was controlling that person. So in this particular case, the moon's not the ruler of the seventh, but the moon is the natural significator for women. So, and also the moon's in Aquarius, and Aquarius is an air sign. So this person may have, kind of, exalted ideas of the feminine, or put women on pedestals or things of that nature. I mean, there could be, and look at how the Neptune's in the seventh, right? So there could be kind of an idolization of the feminine in this chart. Idolization of the other, and obviously then they don't add up, or this person had a lot of problems with alcohol, and so maybe they don't add up. The illusion is not what we thought it was, and then the marriage doesn't continue. So let's see, so for marriage, we would be looking at a few things. We would be looking at the ruler of the seventh, and note that the sun is on the part of fortune, right? So that already says that, oh wait, partnership or marriage or some kind of, or intimacy and relationship is going to be important. The sun is in Venus's sign. Venus is already the lady of marriage. Venus is in Taurus. So that means Venus and the sun are on the part of fortune. So the sun is the ruler of the seventh. Venus is already the natural ruler of love and beauty and pleasure and all of that stuff, like as Tamaritas mentioned. And so, yeah, that sounds like a person who's maybe quite lusty, quite quite taken easily with beauty. Has his own ideas of beauty, right? The moon's in Aquarius. So I think that, yes, that now that we're getting a really, just from looking at the Venus and the sun, someone who's susceptible. I sang for a composer named David Conti, who teaches at the San Francisco Conservatory, and he'd given me a small part in this opera about it was about one of the people at Andy Warhol's during the Andy Warhol garage, or whatever you call it, workshop days. And maybe it was Edie Sedgwick, but anyway, so he had written about her, and so we were listening to auditions of different people doing her aria. And this one woman came in, and she was total like white bread white girl, but she had this beautiful voice, and she illuminated nothing, but the voice was gorgeous. And he was so taken with her. And it was so, this other woman came in, and she didn't have the voice at all, but she had so much almost everything else that was necessary. And it was so difficult getting him to really see how necessary. He's like, he goes, and after he finally came to our point of view, he goes, it's just so difficult for me, when I hear a beautiful voice, sing my music, I'm just so taken with it. I just can't, so I think that this is the same thing with this person. That was kind of a long tangent, but I think that this is the same thing. And I think it's probably with physical beauty too, right? With physical beauty as well. I remember Burt Bacharach on some award show. It was in the 80s or early 90s, where he got on, he got up and got his award, and he inappropriately shared. He like trauma dumped. He like got up there and started trauma dumping. He had just kind of gotten over like being his huge drunkenness, and I think it might have been like when Carol Bayer Sager won for like Through the Eyes of Love. So maybe the late 70s, early 80s, and he got up there and he just kind of went maudlin, and all of a sudden just kind of caught himself after about 2 minutes, and then got off the stage. But like, there's Saturn, there's that 12th house Saturn going public. Like, even he himself went into confession mode, once the spotlight was on, and talked his, and spilled his own tea. So there's that. So we can already see Venus and Sun on the part of fortune. That's going to but why more than one marriage, right? It's fixed signs on both the seventh cusp and on the cusp of the and for the part of fortune, and the seventh from the part of fortune. No, but the seventh part of fortune is in Pisces, which is what we call fertile. So let's see, what part of marriage should we use? Hold on a second. Now there's the Venus. There's a few that we have the opportunity to use. There's the Venus to the Venus to the seventh house, which is kind of the usual one. But if I'm not mistaken, it's Venus to, no, Sun to Venus, if I'm not mistaken, is the first major one. I'm about to get the, hold on a second.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, like that was the most shocking thing for me when I saw that
Four
he had
marriages.
like, yeah,
Four marriage, that's a lot. Like, well, remember last week we were looking at, so go, if you're interested, go and watch last week's video, or which was about the part of Eros, and we used Zsa Zsa Gabor, who was married 9 times or 10 times.
yeah.
And she was married, and that really showed quite a bit. So we should look at the part of Eros for this guy too. But for the first thing though, let's look at the part of marriage and figure out which parts we're going to use.
And what the
Right.
Aquarius like energy, I don't know if this is a modern thing, but I know because I made like a transition between modern to traditional. And I've heard that Aquarius is the sign of divorce and separation. So could that be why? And then it's squaring the sun. So there
I
could be
think,
like conflict with women.
oh, now the square of the sun could certainly do it. Hold on a second. How close is it?
It's like 7 degrees. I think there's
No,
a
no,
7 degree orb.
it's a semi-square. Okay, so it's not really, there's not really a connection between the sun. I was going to say, if there is, the moon is applying to the square of the sun, so that could have something. Is that what you were talking about? The moon
Yes.
applying to the square of the sun? Thank you. I'm
It's
sorry.
like 14. It's like 14
Yeah, I see
Aquarius
that.
and the sun is
Yes, 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 yes. I do see that, and both of them have the really wide orbs, so it's definitely within Miety. I think that yes, certainly that could, and and of course the moon representing women, right? And then not only the moon but Venus. So both of the female planets are involved with the sun, right? I mean, Venus is just cohabitating, but she's also the dispositor of this sun and of the part of fortune.
Mm.
So we know that part of the person's like fortune path is women, is Venusian pastimes or Venusian professions, is Venusian talent, is an expression of a Venusian talent, and then is also difficulties with all seventh house matters and with women. Right? Lawsuits did happen. Dissolution of partnerships did happen. Divorce did happen. Okay, now let's go back to the Bonatti and see which parts we're going to use. Excellent point. Okay,
I've
so
been I've been unofficially following along on YouTube, but I wanted to join today in real time. So I'm kind of familiar with so I'm a newbie, but like not really.
yeah, no, I can tell. No, it's wonderful having you here. Your input is very valuable. Fantastic having
Yeah,
you. Um,
thank you.
yeah, no, wonderful. Please continue to come back. We were just talking about we may not be doing it quite as often as we have been, but we'd love to have you join us anytime. So let's see here. So the first one is Saturn to Venus, day or night. Then the second one is Sun to Venus, I think. Yeah, Sun to Venus is the second one. And then the third one we would use is the Venus to the Venus to the Venus to the seventh house cusp. And then the fourth thing we'll look at is the Eros. Okay, so day or night, it's Saturn to Venus. Saturn is here. Venus is here. Okay, so that's 150 minus 10. 150 brings us to 19. Cancer minus 10 is 9 degrees of Cancer. So the moon is the ruler of the first part of marriage. Now, what do we know about the moon? Even though she's an Aquarius, what's one of the things that we know about her? Changeability. The moon rules changeability. Even though she's in a fixed sign, note that her ruler is not. Her ruler is in a double-bodied sign, more than one. Right? So the moon, even though she's in a fixed sign, also note that the moon, the ruler of the part of marriage, is applying to the square of the ruler of the seventh. So that does give us an idea that there might be problems with marriage. Oh, here comes Stephanie. So say hi to Stephanie, everybody. She just joined. She was my only guest last week. We had a fantastic time.
Hey,
And
Stephanie.
Tamaritis is new this week, and he's been killing it with us on the charts. And so we're Stephanie loves kind of digging into charts too. So I think we'll all have a really good time here together, the three of us. We have already disclosed who this is. This is Burt Bacharach, the composer. And so what, oh, not a problem. You can come whenever you like. So one of the things that we're now looking at, one of the things that I didn't know about him, but which we just found out, is that he's been married 4 times. And so we're trying to figure out why. And so we were looking at, because on first glance, we wouldn't necessarily know that, but there are a few things that have shown us that there might be a in love with loveness. That's really maybe what I was trying to say. I think this chart is in love with love, and is in love with beauty, and is in love with female beauty in all of its form. A beautiful singing voice, a beautiful figure, face, etc. And the first thing that shows us the kind of connection with the feminine or with females is the moon on the cusp of the ascendant, right? And then the second thing we noticed was that the sun, the ruler of the 7th, and Venus, who is the ruler of the part of fortune, are both on the part of fortune. Venus is the other female planet, right? And now, so we've got the Venus kind of governing over what the life path will be. We've got the sun giving its influence to the life path as well, with the as the ruler of the 7th house. And sure enough, it wasn't just Burt Bacharach, it was Bacharach David. It was Burt Bacharach and Hal David. And then we've got multiple marriages, and then we've also got another kind of professional marriage in the form of Dionne Warwick with Burt Bacharach and Hal David. Ooh, you know what? She's on Twitter. I might send her this video and to see what she thinks about it. So anyway, so where were we from that? Oh, so we just looked at the first part of marriage, which is the distance between Saturn to Venus by day or by night, and that had brought us to 9 degrees of Cancer. And so we were just talking about how moon represents changeability. Tamaritis had talked to us about how the moon is applying to the sun, and so a square to the ruler. So now that means that we've got one of the rulers of the part of marriage applying to the square of the actual planet that signifies marriage, the sun, and with the planet Venus, who the moon actually has separated from the Venus, right? So we've got those things as well. So let's look next. Well, really, the next application is the sextile to the Saturn. But yes, there is indeed the applying square to the sun as well. Let's look to find the next part of marriage, which is Sun to Venus by day or night. And so that's going to take us back, let's see, so 11 would take us back to 20 degrees. So that's going to take us back, what is it, 24 degrees? Wait, back 10 would be, no, I'm sorry, back 14. Sorry about that, back 14. So back 14 would bring us to 4 degrees of Aquarius, the moon on it. Once again, it brings us to Saturn, who is, and look at how Saturn's with K2. We were just talking about that. Right? So there's the double-bodied Saturn of maybe more than one mind, and then also disillusioned with K2. So no matter what I have, I'm not content, I'm not happy. And then
I found
already
this one quote. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I found this one quote that he has said about like his marriage, which I find really interesting given that we've been doing this chart. Shall I just repeat it?
Please.
Okay, he says, I don't like splitting up with people, but then the harder part of me will say, I've just got this one shot and I'll just keep going until I get it right. So it's not so far away from trying to make the perfect record.
Ah, so did you
Yep.
also notice the 2 minds? Note that
Exactly.
This person's got Mercury and Gemini, then Sagittarius, the ruler of the moon is in, Saturn, the ruler of the moon is in Sagittarius. So there's the 2 minds, right? So this person's of 2 minds. And there's also the expression of the Taurus. I don't like breaking up. I don't like separating. I don't like leaving my possessions. I don't like splitting up from, I'm attached to the things that I love, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the Taurian, that's where I would go Taurian to Meredith, is the attachment to the things that I collect. And this person collects beautiful women, or women with beautiful voices, or this person collects beauty. This person is in love with love and beauty.
Yeah, and I think he sort of cheated on his third wife. That's how he got married for a fourth time, because this paragraph says their marriage, they're talking about the third marriage, their marriage ended in 1991 when on a trip to Aspen, Bacharach met a young ski instructor named Jane Hansen. Bacharach and Hansen married in 1993 and have 2 children.
So infidelity.
Yep.
Infidelity, all of that shit going on. So I mean, Neptune in the seventh could maybe do that. Now, of course, we always want to figure out how we can find it without looking at that, right? Without having to use that. But let's go to the next one, right? Because so far things are pointing to the moon and Saturn, aren't they? Right?
Yeah,
the first ruler was the moon. The second ruler was Saturn. Moon is ruled by Saturn, right? So let's look and see what the third one is, which is Venus, is the distance between Venus and the 7th house. So so that's 90 degrees plus 11, right? She's at 8, it's at 19. So 90 degrees. Oh, and how close? Oh, wait, so it's at, let's find the real thing. It's at 1, so it should be what, 1105? Is that right? 1105. 1105. We'll put it into Pisces, okay, or whatever it is, or we'll put it into the next sign. 1105 is going to be 53. 11 is 30. 53. So it'll be 0053, whatever. Okay, so that means forward 90 to Taurus. It's going to be right on the Mercury. It's going to be on the 1st degree of Gemini, the third one. So note that this double-minded thing. Oh, here's Shanice. So that's, in my opinion, that might. Hey, Shanice. Oh, I hear the
Hello.
baby in the background.
You hear them in the back?
Of course. All right. Well, welcome back. It's so good to have you with us. We've got new people. We've got Tamaritus, and we've got Stephanie, both of whom, well, Stephanie was with me last week, but both of them are relatively new. So great to have you back. Wonderful. Getting bigger and bigger. All right. So I think, if anything, that's the one that really does it for me. Note also that the Mercury is with Rahu, and Rahu is unconventional and restless and unconventional. And also what you just said, you said, oh, wait, let me read this thing about him. It totally expressed a person who's of 2 minds. I don't want to break up, but yet this could be my one shot, right? Like, oh, I don't want to, I love her so much, but I could have something really great with her, right? 2 minds. So I think that Mercury, this is a really interesting point, because I've always wondered which of these parts is really the most effective. I mean, the Venus to the 7th house is the easiest one to do, right? You can just always look at that one. And so I've always thought of it as all purpose. But based on all 3, the other 2 brought us to the moon Saturn sextile, which I think is interesting. Saturn is retrograde, which Layla brought up as a possibility. Both of them are representative of are rulers of the part of marriage, of the other 2. So that sextile is representative of the part of marriage on some level. And we do know also that even though when a planet is, so that can bring the marriage, but maybe the retrogradation. Oh, wait a second. What do we call it when a planet is applying to a planet that's retrograde or combust? It's called a return of virtue. And it means that the planet that's either retrograde or combust can't take what the other planet that's aspecting is giving. This is one of the, let's actually talk about this for a second here, because once again, we've just looked at all three. We've looked at the three major parts of marriage for a man's chart. The first one was the distance between the sun and Venus, and that brought us to 9 degrees of Cancer. The moon is the ruler of that. The second one is the distance between the sun and Venus, and that brought us to what, 5 degrees of Aquarius or 4 degrees of Aquarius, right? And that's ruled by Saturn. The moon's next application is to Saturn. However, one of the 16 things under consideration 4 was figuring out what kind of aspect configuration you're looking at. And this aspect configuration between the moon and Saturn is called a return of virtue. Because when any planet applies to any other planet, it engages in something called the pushing of management. That management refers to the house that planet A rules. So in this particular case, the moon rules the 6th house. Saturn rules the 1st. The moon, through pushing management, pushes the management of the 6th house onto Saturn. So in this case, the moon would be pushing sickness onto the body, right? Because Saturn is the ruler of the 1st house. So I want to know if there is any illness in this chart, because what this chart is saying is that the moon tried it, but the Saturn wouldn't take it, even though the moon is in the sign of Saturn, right? The moon is the ruler of infirmity in the sign of the planet who rules life. The moon is pushing life and infirmity onto Saturn, but because Saturn is retrograde, Saturn cannot accept that management, so pushes it back on to the moon. So Layla, from what you've looked through, is there much as far as health issues beyond the alcoholism? I would bet not. This might be a place where this is a good return of virtue. Where the return of virtue, there's nothing. How did he die? Personal life, 4 times.
I think he's still alive.
Is he still alive? He
Yeah,
sure
I think
is.
so.
All right, this guy is what, 84? No, almost 100. He's 94.
Yeah, he's 94. Yeah.
So Burt Bacharach is still alive, 94, in good health. I mean, I assume he's in good health. There's nothing about, let's see, early life and education. Nothing says anything about growing up with bad health. Work as a musician, nothing says anything about physical health. Songwriting career.
I think he's still doing shows and everything.
Still doing shows. So once again, this is really important. This return of virtue, it can be yay or nay. It can be a yay or a nay thing. So does this mean then, okay, because this is the implication. The moon is the ruler of the 6th house, which is illness. The moon is in the sign of the planet that rules the 1st house. She's in the 1st house. Usually when you see the ruler of the 6th and the 1st, that means there's an illness of some sort. Okay, so legs, we would be looking at the person's legs. We may be looking at their chest, their chest, their stomach, and maybe he might have had stomach issues all his life, bad digestion, slow digestion. There might have been something like that. Who knows, right? So, I mean, I would expect it. Ruler of the 6th and the 1st, any time. Ruler of the 1st and the 6th, ruler of the 6th and the 1st, I'm expecting something. And here we even have the ruler of the 6th applying to the ruler of the 1st. So ready to push some kind of illness on him or some kind of difficulty even, right? The 6th house is the house of what? Bad fortune. Neither of those things seem to be happening to this person.
Yeah, I've just been checking, but there's nothing about his health, not even like nothing.
And even when he was not at his most popular, his songs are considered like, institutions of American song. Like they're not just considered pop songs, they're considered like the next level of American standards after Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hart and and George Gershwin and that kind of, and the songs that were written in the 20s and 30s. Like his music is his songs are considered just to have the same level of stature as those, unlike Love Me Tender or Blue Suede Shoes or something like that. So or a Leader of the Pack, or or any of those songs that were written kind of around She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there are great Beatles songs, mind you, but when you're thinking about songs that were written at the same time, like a song like Walk On By that Burt Bacharach wrote, like A House Is Not a Home, like Anyone Who Had a Heart, like I mean, they're just all of these amazing songs that, especially between like 1962 or 3 and 1970 or 71, like just dominated the entire musical scene, and especially with Dionne Warwick. And so once again, with this moon here, we can see that. So the last thing I want to do before we move to the Reddit section is I want to look for the part of Eros and see if that also gives us any indication. Because also remember that Gemini can't commit. Gemini has problems committing. But I believe me, I've got my chart ruler in the 7th in Gemini. And every time I have sex with somebody, I'm trying to turn them into a friend with benefits. I'm almost never ever looking for a boyfriend, always looking to turn somebody into a friend with benefits. Okay, so now we have to find the ruler of spirit, right? Because the ruler of fortune, we know. So to find the ruler of fortune or ruler of spirit, we have to find the distance from the sun to the moon. And so that's 270 minus 7. So 270 would take us to Scorpio, to 19. Scorpio minus 7 is 12 degrees of Scorpio. So that makes sense too. Look at this Mars in Pisces. Right? So that makes sense. I mean, if anything, I was really looking for this when I was looking to see what could really support this 4 marriages. I was looking for this. I thought that must be it. And sure enough, as the ruler of Eros, right? And we were last week when I was with Stephanie, I was talking about how I believe it's the Eros of Venus, right? Because Eros is also the part of Venus. So it's the Eros of Venus. It's what makes her come alive. And Mars in Pisces hates to be boxed in, hates to be very intense, very sensual. God, some of the best, Mars and Pisces, some of my favorites. Ooh, baby. Mars and Pisces, the best kissing, the softest touch, the sweetest romance, the most infuriating person to deal with, but oh God, the way he does it. Oh my, Mars and Pisces, baby. Oh yes. So I think that has a lot to do with it, especially with the don't box me in, I can't be categorized, I'm just susceptible to any kind of touch. You can't blame me. I just, how I am. That's that kind of Piscean. And also, once again, Mars in Pisces is what probably gives us the impetus to want to drink as well, right? The Pisces, going towards the liquids, going towards things that release the inhibitions. This person really enjoys, like, once again, enjoys beauty, enjoys the sex, the love, the music, the beauty, the pleasure. And the Mars in Pisces is the sinking further into it. So as the
Would you
ruler of
say?
Sure, good.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Would you say that because like he enjoys that so much, he's always searching for, because like Pisces in general, to me, it can be like very much about idealism and perfection. And so maybe he gets bored with a woman, like, she's beautiful and she's all of this stuff, but once things kind of get old and then something new comes along, it may be more enticing.
I think that and the Mercury and the moon, because the moon, one of the things that we learned when we were looking at the moon's role in, not specifically the moon's role, but the moon in traditional astrology, is that she rules that which is timely and timing. And she rules fads, things that go in and out of fashion. So the moon would certainly be that, the changeability, right? That's what I was saying, kind of the changeability of the moon would have a certain effect. Then the fact that also the Mercury, right? So both the moon and the Mercury are the mind in this. So there'd be fickleness. So I think because the fickleness comes from the mind. And the mind is moon and Mercury. So it's really, in my opinion, more this Mercury in Gemini, this very, very fickle Mercury in Gemini, who, think when people get famous, they're indulged. And so they can indulge sometimes their worst aspects. And sometimes their worst aspects aren't the fact that they're like a Marilyn Manson, an abuser, trafficker, but they're super fickle and they're super fickle and they've got a weak spot for beauty and they can't really commit. And, everybody wants to be with them and be around them anyway. And no one wants to ever call them on their shit because they're famous. And so I think and also this guy's a drunk. This guy's a fickle drunk who can't, keep his hands to himself. And so I think that's part of what's going on, is this fickleness. And the Mars, and I think where the Mars and action comes into is, I don't want to be defined. So this person would think that the relationship, like you said, is too defining, is too confining. I don't like labels. Do we really have to call ourselves married anymore? And once again, Pisces is all about abnegation of responsibility and susceptibility to sensation. She was just so beautiful. She touched my hand. You know what happens when you touch my wrist in that special place? It's all that kind of stuff.
And because you did mention Neptune being in the 7th house, like that could be like not having boundaries when it comes to other people, your relationship with other people.
And certainly not seeing the reality, certainly concocting
Yes.
some kind of thing that isn't there. And I think that's really a big thing, is that there's somebody's concocting something that isn't there and then disappointed when it didn't show up, when it isn't what they wanted.
Which is like good for music, but terrible for relationships. Like that whole very
Exactly.
idealistic. So that shows like how people can be very successful in their career because it's something that can support them, like being artistic, but that whole nebulous mindset doesn't do well with relationships.
Exactly. I mean, so and it's in all situations. I mean, it's an important factor to kind of bring into a chart of a famous person, especially how fame enables their worst aspects and allows them to be magnified. And so it looks like one of their worst aspects is this. It's one of the best things for writing music. It's one of the worst things for committing to a relationship. All right.
I also saw that the 4th house rules the father, right? So I also saw that his father was a newspaper columnist.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So a prominent father. Okay, we got a question from Stephanie. Could fortune conjunct the ruler of the 7th have anything to do with them having multiple marriages? Plus the ruler of both the fortune and the sun is a strong Venus. So it maybe gave them, yes, and we did talk about that right before you came in, Stephanie. It not so much multiple marriages, but certainly because, it's in a fixed sign, right? And so is the Venus. So we wouldn't necessarily, and so is the moon, who's the other ruler, right? The exaltation ruler. So it wouldn't, as far as I'm concerned, I would not have looked at that and thought multiple marriage. I would have looked at and thought, oh, this person's really into love. This 7th house and partnership and love, marriage and partnership are going, and love and things Venusian are going to be an important part of the person's path. But I would not have thought multiples. And once again, when we looked at the parts, then we get a little bit, and especially when we looked at that Venus to the 7th house part, I think that clinched it the most, especially considering what Layla had just read to us, which gave serious Taurus and Gemini vibes. All right. Where am I? Here. Nope, that's wrong. There. Okay, so now we will go to Reddit and we'll look and see in real time what we think about some of these things. I kind of like this one, but I'm going to wait and come back to something else. Everyone is always shitting on me. I can't communicate. I can't express myself. Help. I feel like well, let's do this one. I like this one. I like the everyone is always shitting on me. I can't communicate. So where would we find the shitting on me? Where would we find that? Just if we were translating it based on language, what house would we look at for being shit on? I mean, I'm just
The
being
6th or the 8th.
8th, right? The 8th is the
The
anus.
8th is where it comes out, right?
Yep, the 8th is the anus. So this person, notice that the sun's in the 8th. The person's feeling shit on, right? But usually, and note that the ruler of the 1st is also the ruler of the 8th, because that's what I was going to say. Usually with these, the ruler of the ascendant is the one that shows up in the writing. And so here we've got the ruler of the ascendant as the ruler of the 8th, showing up as the ruler of the 8th. So note what's going on with the ruler of the ascendant. What's going on with her?
She's in Cancer.
With?
Saturn.
Yeah, so would that have something to do with feeling shit on?
Well, Saturn is exalted.
No, it's not.
Oh, sorry. It's fallen. Yeah.
It's in detriment, right? So,
Yeah.
and Saturn, this person is saying, I can't. Who's the expression of can't?
Saturn.
Saturn.
I wonder if it's family.
Because the
That this person is
fourth house.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because Saturn is ruling the 4th house as well. I wonder is it family that he's talking, or he or she is talking about?
Maybe. How old this person is young, right? This person's quite young, Saturn in Cancer. So they're definitely, what, 16 or 17 maybe?
Probably.
Right? So this person, so we know that the family, so they're under 21, or even if they are in their 20s, then Sun is also in the house, on the house cusp, giving it more punch. Yes. They're also, so we know that the family does have something to do with it, right? Or the home environment, or the environment that they're being raised in, whatever environment they're being raised in obviously has something to do with it. But then they say they can't communicate. Why? What is that? What's going on with that? Saturn also rules the 3rd, so that could explain. Now, I don't necessarily Saturn doesn't rule the 3rd; he rules the 4th and is intercepted fourth, intercepted in the 4th only. Jupiter is the ruler of the 3rd, so that's the first thing. Secondly, I don't necessarily consider the 3rd house to be a house of communication. I consider it a house to be a house of communications, like letters and posts. Because those things do what? They travel, the mail travels by road, right? It's so things that, so communications that travel, I definitely do. But communication itself, like, is there a house that represents communication? Like, what house would actually represent the person's communication or how they speak or their speech? What house would be that?
The 2nd house.
The second house. That's the house of speech. So the 1st house is the head, the face. So the brain, the face. But when it comes to what comes out of the throat, it's the 2nd house. And that rules our speech. That's in Vedic astrology also. So notice that I'm always using the 2nd house for the voice when we were looking at these singers' charts. And we know, and also Mercury is the natural significator for the voice. He also rules the tongue. So 2nd house for their speech, and note that Mars is in Pisces again.
A mute sign.
A mute sign, very good. And the moon is applying to Mars, who is mute.
Yeah.
Right? Venus is mute. The Saturn is mute. Venus is mute. Note that Saturn is also the ruler of Libra based on his exaltation. So we've got both rulers of Libra in a mute sign. We've got the moon applying to the square of Mars in a mute sign. And then we've got Mercury in a sign. I mean, moon is with Mercury. So what do we think is really going on here?
there's a lot in the mind that they probably can't express. They probably can express themselves or communicate how they want to because there's probably so much going on, but maybe because of the environment, they can't.
What if this person can't communicate because they won't shut up? Moon is with Mercury, the ruler of the tongue, in its own sign. Mars represents interruptions and disruption. What if they think they can't communicate? But what if because they didn't say I can't talk. They didn't say I can't talk. They didn't say I can't make myself understood. They said I can't communicate.
I like that idea. That makes sense.
Right? I looking at this, and it's not, and it's because of the moon. Remember, the moon is our reflex. And Mars, the moon is going to Mars in effective communication. The moon is going to Mars, and Mars is the interrupter. I think that this person has maybe overruns other people when they talk. They might be a little bit combative in nature, and as a result, they could be defensive when things are brought up. This person might talk before they think, right? Because the Mars is there as well. So Mars is rashness. I think that there might be a rashness. Defensive Venus applying to Saturn. Oh, yes. And so then maybe a little bit of victim mentality as well, because there's already, they've been saying people are shitting on me, right? So people are shitting on me. And it's looking at Venus as ruler of the 8th house, right? First and 8th. Venus is shitting on me. Or my chart is shitting on me. Or people are shitting on me. However, when we look at it, we see this moon is applying to the square of Mars, the ruler of the 7th, other people, others. Also the open, who become enemies, right? Love can become enemies, or I think where we go, right? I loved him and now I can't stand the sight of him, 7th house. So once again, I think that there might be a little bit of Mars and its joy too, whole sign, that's right. Whole sign it would be, absolutely. No, but that would also put Jupiter in the 7th, right? So wouldn't that be kind of a good thing? But note that the Jupiter's applying to the square of Saturn. And Jupiter is giving fall to Saturn. Saturn's giving exaltation to Jupiter, but Jupiter's giving fall to Saturn. Saturn is one of the rulers of the ascendant. So what do we want to tell this person? Go mute. Listen more. Listen more. Don't react. Don't respond verbally. Right? The moon is in Gemini. It's going to say something in response. Right? So don't respond verbally. You might not be picking up on cues because you're not listening. You might be talking and not listening. You might not be picking up on cues, or you might be responding verbally in the wrong way or too quickly. Slow down. Venus and Saturn. Venus is going to Saturn for a reason. He's telling her to slow down and go mute, go silent. Go silent, observe is what I would say to this chart. Feel, get it, feel, observe, go into your empathetic, go into your empath, go empathic, feel things out. Get in touch with intuition. All that touchy-feely bullshit the moderns say. But in this case, this is what they need, in my opinion. What else do you all have to say? Is there a house or sign you would associate with observation? Well, the mind is the observer, right? It would be moon. It would be moon or Mercury. I mean, actually, the moon would be the observer. Mercury would put our observations into words. Right. So the moon is the mind of the senses by which we encounter all life, right? We encounter all of nature and all of life. Thus, observation would fall under the moon, but the ability to interpret that which we are observing and to translate it into language would be Mercury. That's my take. The sun maybe too, though, right? Because nothing can exist under the light of the day, right? All things, what are the best disinfectant is sunlight, they say, right? Any secret, bring it into the light of day. So maybe the sun and the moon together as the eyes in the sky represent observation. Excellent question. Fantastic. What else? Anybody else have something they want to say to this person? They want to, any other observation? Do you? No? Okay. All right, I'll write to them. I'll do what I did last time. I wrote to all of the people and told them that, hey, our group looked at your chart, and you know, we thought of whatever. Today's my birthday. I'm sad. Well, who cares? Okay. Any advice regarding career? I'm not ready yet. Why am I so angry when we don't care? Please feel helpless. I'm unemployed by my children. Love is not the main goal. Well, wait a second. But why do I have such strange relationships? No, okay, never mind. I am destined to be alone for the rest of my life. You know, we haven't done a love chart in a while. Why do I always feel like I'm the outcast among people, family, friends, co-workers? But this is, am I destined to be alone? What? Let's see. I don't, you know, it's sounding callous and bitchy and mean girlish, but I want to be really clear about something. And I was talking about this with Stephanie last week. I don't actually like natal astrology. I don't really like it. You all don't know it. I think I told Stephanie last week, though. I stopped reading. I got actually to like a burnout place with natal astrology, and stopped all involvement with Western astrology for 11 years. I did nothing but Vedic astrology. During that time period is where I went to India and did all my pilgrimages and all my studying of yoga and everything. But everything I was doing back then was based on my Vedic chart. I hate natal astrology. I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't hate any aspect of astrology because I love astrology. But I just think the way that it's been magnified, it makes me want to vomit. And also the way that it's now become kind of an extension of like this kind of self-help thing. I just can't stand it. So when I'm saying things like we don't care, what I'm really saying is that I love astrology. I don't give a shit about your chart. I mean, that's really what I mean. I love astrology, so I love charts. Put a chart in front of me, yay. But I could not care less about your chart specifically. And the main thing that lets me know that I want to usually bypass a chart or ignore it is when this particular line is written. I'm trying to learn about myself. Next, bam, next, right? Bam. This astrology is bigger than human design. And as a result, that's why Layla and I are talking about my horary class coming up, because I'm getting to my limit with it already. So when you hear me say things like that, note, you know, I wouldn't do this kind of shit if I didn't care, right? I wouldn't be picking out people's charts and trying to give them what we thought, and you know, really being serious about giving them the attention that they need and possibly giving them the right kind of advice they need, if I didn't give a shit. But I really don't give a shit. Okay, so moving on. Can someone tell me more about this chart? No. Interested in knowing about my 12th house Saturn and karmic debts I'm expected to pay. Ooh, I like that question. I like that. See, that's what will usually make me answer one of these things, is when they have some kind of question that I find interesting. And so I like this question, so I'm going to answer it. Now, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that the 12th house stuff points to their karmic debts. Right. Matter of fact, I don't think it does at all. Because Layla, of course, having been with me, and Shanice even having been with me for a little while, knows what I think. The entire chart is the record of your karmic debt, the entire thing. And often the thing that this idea of what is it I'm here to do, or what is my karmic debt, or what am I here to pay for, pay out in this life, the entire chart is telling you that. And what you are generally doing is generally what you are here to do. But it is often not the thing that we think, because always we think that our purpose has to do with either our career or is something that will exalt us. right? We think of a purpose as something that, oh, I'm going to find my purpose and it's going to exalt me and I'm going to be like Mother Teresa or be like, Bill Gates or whatever the fuck, right? But that's not necessarily true. Everybody's purpose is specific to them, and it may have nothing to do with your career. It may have nothing to do with any public aspect of your life path. And we were looking at that 2 Thursdays ago on Clubhouse when we had one guy that came in and he said, "Oh, hey, I'm so glad. I need some help with my, I'm a truck driver and I need help with my career." And then he told me about the chart, and I was like, "But this is going on and this is going on." And he's like, "Oh my God, that's the story of my life." And I said, "Yeah, well, we got to what the actual soul purpose is, but it has nothing to do with your career, see?" And he was like, "Oh my God, you're right." So let's look, because more than likely, I mean, she's thinking, or he or she is thinking, she is thinking that the Saturn is pointing to the karmic debt in the life. What else could? First of all, Mercury is the ruler of the ascendant. Their 12th doesn't look too bad considering it's ruled by exalted Venus, trine dignified Mars, and square the moon and Jupiter. Venus is indeed dignified. Moon is applying to the square of her. The Jupiter is leaving, or she's leaving the square of Jupiter. Jupiter is retrograde and detrimented. Remember, okay, keep remembering, everybody, that when planets are retrograde, they impede the planets that they aspect. When planets are in detriment or fall, they impede the planets that they aspect. When planets are cadent, they are said to impede. All right, so just keep that in mind, because often we'll, oh, well, it's good with this thing with Jupiter. It's like that Jupiter is in shitty condition, kind of like mine, and doesn't have the Mercury in either Gemini or in a Sagittarius, giving him strength. He can just be certainly fucking wayward, and he's the ruler of this Venus. So there's a waywardness going on in the love life. Notice that he's also the ruler of the 7th. So there will be a waywardness. And once again, we're at 1 degree Gemini. We were just looking at 1 degree Gemini with the Mercury in the last chart. And we're dealing with Venus in Pisces. We've been dealing with planets in Pisces. And so we were just talking about how Pisces doesn't like to be pinned down, and how Mercury and how Gemini generally has problems doing what? Committing. Garthastro says a retro and detriment planets, but we're not using Vedic, and also that's not 100% believed or used, right? There is some belief that retrograde planets are stronger, and then there's some that believe that you would put the planet in the house before, like if mine is in the 7th, it would be considered in the 6th. But since we're not doing Vedic astrology, that's not really relevant to what we're looking at. And no, they're not. In my particular case, what I'm really finding with retrograde planets is that they have an agenda of their own that take you to something that is not useful, and continuously take you back to something that is not useful. So in this chart, this person might be someone who has problems, committing, but is leading people on, going back to them over and over again, right? The Jupiter is the ruler of the 7th. It's in Gemini, of 2 minds. It's retrograde, but I'll go back to the familiar, that it means somebody that's new. So if anything, that, in my opinion, this Venus separating from the Jupiter, who is her ruler, the moon applying to the Jupiter, who is the ruler of the Venus and who is the ruler of the 7th. In my opinion, that is part of the karmic debt. Now, Saturn's in the house of Venus. Venus is the ruler of the 12th of self-undoing. So she's exalted, so she can do 2 things. She can make the 12th really, really, really pleasurable, and she can make the self-undoing really, really, really strong. So this person's going to deal with bad choices around love, in my opinion, and relationship. Let's look at the Venus to 7th house part of marriage. to get an idea, since that one was so kind of descriptive in the last chart. So she's at 3, it's at 11, so it's back 90, forward 8. Back 90, it's 12, forward 8. So 20 degrees of Pisces. So even the part of marriage is ruled by Jupiter with the Venus on it, right? So, and this Jupiter in retrograde in Gemini, very, very scattered. This person might even go for the poly thing. This person might even go for sometimes I'm sexual, sometimes I'm not at all. Ruler of the 7th is that Jupiter too, right? That would make me agree that love could be a source of trouble. Absolutely.
Would Mercury be considered under combustion?
Would Mercury be considered? Yes. Yes, it
So would
would.
that be a part of the story, like what you said with being fickle, or maybe the mind being too much under the influence of the sun?
So usually when I see planets that are combust, there is a not seeing things clearly. There's an over magnification, or the overestimation. So I think that yes, absolutely. I think that if anything, remembering that the Mercury is the conscious mind, that when it comes to figuring out what we choose to do, our choices, I think, and no, also I remember reading somewhere that the choices that we make were the 10th house. And so Jupiter is the ruler of that 10th house. So it'd be all over the place. See, this moon with Jupiter is all over the place. And maybe it could even be all over the place with being too interested in pursuing its information, that it's interested in, to focus on love. And they might find themselves attracting relationships, and they're too interested in whatever they're interested in, and they don't want to give anything, and they don't want to commit to the relationship because this thing that they're learning is too important, or this thing that they're interested in is too interesting. No, I think this chart is sexual. The Venus is applying to the Mars here. I was thinking originally it might not be very sexual. Mercury leaving combustion and trining, Mercury leaving its combustion and trining its dispositor are bonus points, though, right? And then what does she say? I'm not usually huge on outer planet uses, but Pluto conjunct the descendant could also indicate trouble with partners, control, and manipulation. Yes, absolutely. Let's see, applying to the ruler, but the ruler is retrograde. So Saturn is retrograde. So that's another return of virtue. So in this case, this would be a return of virtue without fitness, because planet A is combust and planet B is retrograde. So no, it would be of no help. That trine would be almost no help at all. Even though it's got supposedly a reception, Saturn can't receive it because he's retrograde. Another return of virtue chart. How fascinating. Ruler of the 7th and the 1st partner has too much influence on them. So I wouldn't put this particular one in the 1st because it's not within. The most I give for is for an angle. I give 8 degrees. Notice that this Jupiter is at 147 and the ascendant is at 1140. So that it's still, as far as I'm concerned, it's still in the 12th, which is even more malefic. So this person, like you said, like Stephanie said, the Pluto on the cusp of the 7th is an issue. The Venus being ruled by this retrograde detrimented Jupiter is an issue. The fact that the moon is applying within 12 minutes to this Jupiter, and once again, anything can work on the personal level, right? Anything can work on the personal level, but it's when we get to the house rulerships, and then especially the 12th, so the partner could wreak havoc. Indeed, love wreaks havoc in this chart. Love is complicated in this chart. I promise you, it's complicated. Is something this person says all the time. It's complicated. It's complicated, right? So Moon ruled 2nd, and Rahu is in the 2nd relationship, whose money is a source of their issues in relationship. let's see, moon. Got it. Since the second and the seventh are together, the rules of second and the seventh are together. Yes, and the Rahu. Interesting. Yes, that could be an issue. That indeed could. That indeed could. Where's the part of fortune in this chart? We don't see it. So part of fortune, moon, so sun to moon. So let's see. So 120 plus 15 is what it looks like. 120 is 12 plus 15 is 27 Libra. So 27 Libra is the part of fortune. That's that Venus. And that Saturn, right? 24 is that Venus, right? So that Venus who's separating from the Jupiter and the moon is applying to it. And the Mercury is in the fall of Jupiter, right? You were just mentioning, Shanice was mentioning the Mercury going to the Saturn. The Mercury is in the fall of Jupiter. Jupiter is really the havoc wreaker in this chart. And I bet you, now remember we were talking about how the 10th house is our reputation. There's who we are, and then there's what we have a reputation for, and not always are they the same thing. I would bet you that this person has a reputation for being scattered, has a reputation for being all over the place, for biting off more than they can chew in certain informational areas, for having a quick, nimble mind that can cover many topics and not necessarily settle on one. Right. So think of how that Jupiter retrograde in detriment is going to affect the mind. Remember, the mind is the senses. So the mind is the what did I say? It's the mind of the senses that encounters the world. This mind of the senses encounters the world through Jupiter in Gemini retrograde. I know all about that because my moon is separating from the sextile of a Jupiter Gemini retrograde. Right. And so the moon, so this person probably goes very fast, probably, as I said, bites off more than they can chew as far as learning whatever they want to learn, gets completely immersed in it, goes from one thing to the next. And now that we know it's also involved with the 7th house, that might be what they do with other people as well. But love is an issue. And so when we're talking about karmic debt, it looks like the karmic debt is really about love relationships and making that simpler, right? Because it's got to be very complicated. And so how do we make that simpler? Okay, what other comments do you all have?
I really feel like they have the potential to attract, like we already stated, like a person that can just wreak havoc in their life. Like it may be somebody that I can see this chart as being a person who may have issues, but then they get with somebody that just reinforces like the bad part.
Yeah, and once again, I think that they can really hurt others with their the word I'm looking for is when you can't make up your mind. What's that word? When you can't make up your mind? Indecision. Indecision. I think that this is a highly indecisive chart, and that and especially in the arena of love affairs and intimacy, highly indecisive, and that hurts other people.
If this person were to get married, would you see issues with in-laws? Like maybe like issues with the partner's family?
Parents with the partner's family. Let's see. Possibly. I mean, Jupiter in Gemini is generally pretty benign, right? It's not trying to hurt anybody. It just happens. It just doesn't see what it's doing, you know? So I wouldn't necessarily think so. No, I wouldn't necessarily. I don't even think this person is a bad person or a shitty person or problematic. Like the last person whose chart we looked at, there were things that were problematic that in my opinion, that were kind of kind of affecting the situation. In my opinion, this karmic situation is the problematic aspect. They go into like a state of being when the 7th house comes up, and that creates all this karma. Laws are 9th house. Some say laws are 10th house, but Jupiter is law. I'm go ahead and think of the law as the 9th house. Although, the 10th house is your kingdom, which is governed by laws, government. So let's go with the 10th house as law. Jupiter in the 10th house for laws. So now look at that. If indeed, because there are laws of marriage, right? So if indeed the Jupiter is the ruler of law, right, as the ruler of the 10th, then that wouldn't be necessarily quite so good, right? That person might have problems. In-laws. Oh, I was using, yes, 10th house, fourth from the, I was just looking at parents of the spouse. So 10th house, fourth from the 7th. So I was just looking at it that way. Yeah, and there's even a conjunction between Venus and Jupiter. I wouldn't say that there'd be problem. Once again, like they might find themselves interested in, like this person is probably very attracted to intellectual stimulus. And so they would probably be very attracted to people who are very intellectual, and thus their families are probably quite intellectual. And she might find herself like attracted to, like-minded people whose families are kind of quirky and, quirky and scholastic or academic or something like that. That's what I'm more thinking. All right, so that's what we think about Johannesburg. Oops.
One more thing is I feel
Yeah.
like the life could be public in some way.
Let's see.
Because I was watching one of your previous videos, and it was someone else in the group that was bringing a point about how different parts of the chart, like for example, the bottom of the chart is like very private, and then this person has most of their planets,
Oh,
with the
yes, yes,
exception of
yes.
Mars.
Yes,
So a
true.
lot of their stuff could be like very visible. Their life could just be public. Because when people say like because this is the karmic debt chart, right?
It is a day chart, yes.
No, like their question, didn't they say, "What is my karmic debt?" Was that the
My
question?
karmic debt, yes, that's what they asked. What is the karmic debt?
And so part of it, I would say, is for your life to be very public in some way, very visible, not very private.
I think I think we could probably, in a very general way, very general way, probably confirm that. And, she would obviously have to. Stephanie says, while viewing Venus as the general significator of love, even though it doesn't rule the 7th, it being exalted in square Jupiter and retrograde Gemini makes me think maybe they don't have boundaries when it comes to their affections or love. I would think that since we're talking about they're both in double-bodied signs, that they do and they don't. There's two people. When we're talking about this person, we're talking about they show up as two different people. I promise. And that's part of the problem for the other person, is that, wow, they're so loving and they're so Venus, they're so one fish, and then they're cold fish, and then they're so engaged, and then they're so detached. So I think that that's what's going on with this personally. All right. Oh shit! I keep stopping the share when I just need to do a new one. My Venus exalted square, right? No comment. Okay, let's see what else we want to look at. What does my chart say about my marriage? Since we're dealing with love, any red flags? I guess this person may have just gotten married. Let's see. Will it say anything? Since we're dealing with marriage. Now, once again, as Stephanie said, Venus is the natural significator of marriage and love and sex and children as a result of sex, right? So all of those things, and women, and of beauty and of pleasure and jewelry, right? So all those things. So we always look at the natural significator of whatever it is we're talking about and the house ruler, right? And so in this particular case, we were combining, and generally in this case, with the 7th house, we would combine looking at Venus, looking at the ruler of the 7th, and looking at the parts that are connected to the 7th, and maybe triplicity rulers connected to the 7th as well. So note that this is a Libra rising chart asking about my marriage, right? So that's one thing. And then note how Saturn is at the very, very end of the 7th retrograde in Taurus. Right? So maybe that's what they're scared about. So in my opinion, like that's really far. Remember, we've talked about what is the most effective part of a house. First of all, what's the most effective point of the house? Stephanie and I talked about that last week. It's the cusp of the house. That's the strongest point of the house, the cusp. The most effective part of the house was considered to be from 5 degrees before the cusp to 15 degrees after. So if this person is seeing Saturn in the 7th and getting all scared, then what would we say to them? Well, sweetie, it's not anywhere near 15 degrees of the cusp. Right? Saturn would need to be at 27 degrees of Aries to be a real threat to this 7th house. And remember, they said my marriage, which implies that they're married. Any red flags? Right? It sounds like she's talking about right now. Go ahead, Tamaritas.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I was reading that wrong. I thought Saturn was retrograde, but that's in Taurus, right?
It's retrograde in Taurus, yes.
Okay, I was gonna say if it was in Aries, then it would be like a lot worse. Like then that would be a real red flag.
Absolutely, that's my point. So that's absolutely my point, is that more than likely it's retrograding to its fall to the whole sign 7th. It is, but it's not there yet, which is important. So that's my point, is that remember, for this chart, the strongest part of the 7th house is 12 degrees and 39 minutes of Aries, of the 7th house. And the most effective part of this 7th house is from 7 degrees 39 to 27 degrees 39. So Saturn is outside of that. So she needn't worry if indeed, and I know that we know it, right? We don't even have to guess. We know she saw that Saturn in the 7th and she's scared. Well, honey, it's not really that close. Yes, technically it's in the 7th, but it's not close enough to be really, really a problem. So let's look to see if there are any problems. So Venus is where? Venus is in Sagittarius, cohabitating with the sun. She's under the rays, moving into combustion. She's peregrine, under the rays, moving into combustion. We don't love that. All right. Mars, the ruler of the 7th house, is at the end of Aquarius. Is he receiving any aspects? Mars is about to trine Jupiter. Their 7th house ruler is actually pretty strong. I can see its ruler, it's in a good house and applying to trine with Jupiter. Yes, I would say absolutely, despite the fact that it is peregrine, that it is in the sign of Saturn, although Saturn is in Taurus, right, which is Venus's sign. It's applying to Jupiter, even though Jupiter is in the fall of Mars. I mean, the detriment of Mars, right? Libra is the detriment of Mars. Libra is a good sign for Venusian things like marriage. So maybe this person might be conflict averse, but she can attract a marriage. I'm seeing a partner that may really enjoy their freedom and new experiences. Why? Mars in the 5th trine Jupiter. Okay, so that Mars for the enjoyment. Jupiter. Okay, got it. Okay, so the partner. Why not them too? Right? Because Mars is our action. Mars is I mean, it's certainly specific kind of to the ruler of the 7th, but Mars is also our action. Right? So this person looks like they would want to act on the things that they enjoy. Or maybe even what they enjoy is doing things in partnership, right? The ruler of the 7th and the 5th. So they might enjoy things where you need more than one person, where it's two things, where two people together. I think that Combus Venus is the source of their relationship trouble. Maybe she can't adequately express her needs or is inhibited in some way. Now, we hadn't decided that there was any trouble yet. What we had decided was that we didn't really love what was going on with Venus, but we did like what was going on with Mars, right? You were yourself Mars's main advocate. So I think, and also looked at the part of fortune is Venus, is ruled by Venus. So, and she rules what, first and sixth or first and eighth, right? So she rules the usual thing when you have Libra and Aries and Libra, Taurus and Scorpio on the ascendant, Mars and Venus are going to rule either the first and eighth or the first and sixth. So in this particular respect, we'll just note that she rules the part of fortune and the first. So what do we think about that? What do we think about Venus, this Venus under the rays of the sun, representing the part of fortune and the ascent, but representing the part of fortune and representing love and marriage? Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. 29 Virgo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, well, actually then, shelve the part of fortune aspect, but then, so then my question is, what do we think about the Venus representing marriage and love being under the rays? That's the only thing going on with her. She's under the rays of the she's under the rays of the sun.
Does under the rays carry the same significations as combustion, but maybe in a milder manner?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so being somewhat blinded by love.
Maybe. I
I know
mean,
that's kind of general, but
no, but
the
that's
only
good
thing
because
I
I mean that's writing the signification beautifully, right? Because that's what the sun would do, blind you. Yes, so there is a possibility of that. When we saw Burt Bacharach, remember Burt Bacharach had the combustion, or it wasn't combustion, but they were both in the same sign, and we could say that that was kind of what was going on with him, and in love with loveness, blinded by love, blinded by beauty. So we could maybe see that there might be an overestimation of the place of love in their life. How's that? I think I want to go back to what Shanice was saying. I think that Shanice, you're onto something, and I think though that you're onto something with both her and the partner. I think that this is an extremely independent and adventurous person, or should be, if they're not. This should be a quite independent person who is willing to get up and get in their car and go and do whatever the hell they want to do whenever they want to do it. That's what I would expect. And like you said, with the Mars Jupiter, attracting the independent partner that wants to do its specific interesting things, I think this person is like that too. And I think if anything, there might be a little bit too much, oh, I'm going to do my thing, what are you going to do? Oh, okay, bye, in the relationship. There might be a little too much space, right? The Mars is an Aquarius, so it's not super squishy and emotional. The Venus is in Sagittarius, the Jupiter is in Libra. So there's a mutual reception between them by sign. She might have a little artistic ability too, then. There might be something. So that this could be somebody really interested in art and doing their own thing, their sculpture, their art, and their person does their thing, does their bicycling thing, and oh, we don't see each other until the weekend. Venus under the beams is not ideal. But there are mitigating factors such as it being Venus in a night chart and the ruler of her seventh is decently placed. So I'm not terribly worshipped about the relationships overall. However, can we get specific about what we think the Venus means? Right. So, I mean, saying, okay, yeah, that's okay based on this factor, but what is it? How is it actually going to translate into a cycle, either a cycle of behavior or a cycle of experience? Right. That's what we're really trying to figure out. And so what do you have to say to that? Because if we can say, well, hey, what should you be looking at? Right? If let's say she's newly married, she wants to know, hey, what she wants, she just said, what are the red flags? What are the red flags? What am I susceptible to? What are the things that they're doing that I'm susceptible to? What are the things that I'm doing that they're susceptible to? Now, doesn't look like there are a lot of red flags in this chart, or rather the only red flag is this Venus under the rays. But one of the implications about a Venus under the rays is, once again, it's blinded a little bit. It's not seeing completely clearly because the sun's in the way. And Venus and the sun are both luxury and value. Things that are valuable and things that are luxurious. Venus is jewelry, sun is the gold. Sun is the exaltation ruler of the 7th house. Right? So he's kind of burning. Remember, combustion is being burned. Could Venus under the rays be able? Yes, it can. So that's really more of what it can be a lack of awareness in the guise of putting too much estimation. It's rarely about underestimation, because remember, the sun is arrogant. One of the things I noticed when I first came back to Western and came back to Reddit, at that time we were getting lots and lots of charts of people saying, will I be famous? Will I be famous? Will I be famous? Thankfully, they nipped that shit in the bud. But one of the things that I saw consistently was combusted planets, combusted Venus, combusted Mercury, Venus, combusted Mercury. The people who wanted to be famous writers all had the combusted Mercury. People who wanted to be the famous actors and actresses all had the combusted Mercury, or Mercury Venus, or the combusted Venus. Right, so there was this, this pie in the sky. That's the sun. There was this pie in the sky kind of overestimation of what they could really accomplish. And so maybe that, once again, is in this chart might be the problem, or might be the thing that could rear its head. Note that Venus rules the 8th house of the monster in the chart. Could the sun specifically indicate a source of, a source of problems for Venus? Since, let's see, so since since the sun rules the 11th, maybe friends are the source. Yeah, very good point. I love that. I love that, Stephanie. Yeah, very possibly, since it's the ruler of the 11th, issues with friends. And it could be friends that are adventurous and want to do things and go travel and whatever. And I think two things are the problem, or could be problems in this chart. The people together are super independent and don't really need togetherness, right? They like each other, they love each other, they choose each other, but as people, they don't really need to be around people. So that could be a problem. I'm sorry, Spotty Connection, Antoine. Do you think that there is any significance to the sun being the exaltation ruler of the 7th? I did bring that up. Yes, person losing clarity. Yes, and we did talk about that. So I think yes. So there's the issue of the independence that you brought up, and then secondly, this issue of maybe overestimating the need for relationship, overestimating the partner, investing too much in love. Or not seeing the partner 100%, correctly. And it could be also because once again, there's distance. Mars and Aquarius. Aquarius is distant. Mars in Aquarius is the ruler of the 7th. That's distant. Sun in Sagittarius, that's on the go. So there's distance and on the go in this marriage. And I think that the other thing might be that whatever red flags there might be, we don't actually see because we're not together enough. Anything else? Great questions, everybody. Venus in Sagittarius could be too much of an idealist in love. Maybe she needs to take off the rose-colored glasses. Possibly. It is in the human half. It's in the first half of Sagittarius. So there could certainly be ideals / philosophies. I think this person might be an artist. I think that, and note that Aries is on the cusp of the 7th. I think that we may have two people who are quite self-sufficient and a little bit self-absorbed, and thus give each other their space, and that could be a problem. And like, for instance, when I lived in Thailand, there was a couple that came there to retire. They were both in their late 50s, and it was the first time that they had lived together like fully 24/7 in 30 years. They both had high-powered jobs where they traveled all the time. Neither of them were ever home. They had no children. Neither of them were ever home. They saw each other now and then, once a month, twice a month, did vacations and holidays together. But other than that, saw each other almost not at all. This was their first time building a life together, cohabitating after 30 years. And of course, the challenge was, can we do it? It's been perfect for this 30 years. Can we do it in each other's faces? I think that this chart is going to have similar issues. Oh, I keep forgetting that I don't need to switch. I just need to go back to the other page. I would suspect she could be a writer with that huge third house emphasis, ruler of the third and the first, and moon conjunct Mercury, possibly. We'll see what she has to say. Ooh, this looks fun. Does this chart indicate anything about dreams? Foreshadowing. I feel like I can't discern between dreams and reality anymore. Thanks. So what would we, just on first listening to that question, think? What's a problem? What would we think that would be a problem with, based on a sign or a planet or whatever?
Mercury,
Okay, and why Mercury?
because Mercury represents that communication and how we think, our conscious mind. So if you can't, I feel like Mercury is how we are able to like make distinctions between different things. So if you can't do that, then that could be like, because I see Mercury in Pisces, and that's debilitating. I think it's detriment. Or
Oh, well, see,
fall,
wait
it's
a minute.
fall, it's
That was where I was actually going. I was going to Pisces. I wasn't even going. So the thing is, it's not Mercury. It's Mercury in Pisces.
Okay.
It's not just Mercury. It's Mercury. So I was expecting somebody to say Neptune, because, when people can't get their shit together with that. Third house is just dreams. I don't, I've only ever heard Ben. Hey, Stephanie, can you come on and tell me where you heard that, or where you read that? Because I know you've read it somewhere probably.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
I got it from Demetra George's book, Ancient Astrology. She has a whole section on the third house. Let me pull it up. I have it in front of me.
Does she do any charts with it? With using the third house for dreams?
I don't think so. I just know she's mentioned it in passing. Let me pull it up. I have the book in front of me. I'm trying to get to the page.
Oh, great. And if she has a rationale for it too, because Lily uses the ninth house for dreams. And remember, we did we looked at my dream in one of the things, and we used the ninth house for it, not the third. And so Ben Dyke says third too, but that's all he says. Like, and I haven't found it anywhere in Bonatti, in like nowhere else. I haven't really found it. I haven't found it in any of the Islamic writers.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm scanning through my
And
notes.
she would probably be coming from a Hellenistic standpoint. And see, the sun is prophecy. The ninth house is prophecy and dreams that are prophetic. And so that's why I was thinking of the ninth house as dreams.
I found two lines. Let's see. The first one is, when Hellenistic texts delineate planets in the third house, they frequently describe religious observances, priests and priestesses, sacred rites, divination, and divination, especially by dreams. That's all that I see there. And then there's another section. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going through here.
No.
She talks a lot about how the third house has to do with the goddess and things learned in dreams. Kind of see where that came from.
Okay.
But or actually, let me see. There might be a little more. Talks about divination. Let's see. Divination through dreams.
See, all of that stuff got moved to the 9th.
Yeah, that's part of why I asked if the third house had to do with dreams, just because my first thought was the 9th, but then I remembered this book, which just happened to be in front of me. I remember this book mentioned third, so I don't know actually.
So now here's the other thing about this particular question. What they're really saying is that they can't discern between dreams and reality. Is anything about dreams foreshadowing? So are they saying that they're having dreams and the dreams are coming true and so they don't know which is true? Or are they saying that they're having a split from reality?
That I would think the latter. Also, I feel like that Mercury in Pisces is being really loud, both in the nature of the question, and
right,
just
and so did
the nature of their problem. Because Mercury
and so did
Pisces.
Temeritus, exactly. And it's the ruler of the ascendant here, right?
Mhm.
And so did Temeritus. That's where he zoomed right in on that too. And of course, even without looking at the chart, the very first thing I thought is what's in Pisces.
That's a very Piscean question.
Yeah, right. That was my very first question. You can't, when you can't distinguish reality. Actually, a beautiful point that Temeritus made was about making distinctions and how Mercury is responsible for that. That was so brilliant. And so, yes, this aspect of making distinctions when Mercury is in Pisces, it can't necessarily do that. But Pisces can't necessarily do that, period. So when somebody is saying, I don't know what's real, I think, okay, where's Pisces? Or there must be shit going on in Pisces. And sure enough, if we were to break this planet down as far as what is advancing, what's in a state of advancement in this chart? What is? The
Mercury
moon
and Pisces.
and Mercury, right? The moon and Mercury in Pisces. And is Jupiter close enough? Yeah, Jupiter's within 5 degrees. So the ruler of the, and look at how the Jupiter is in detriment and retrograde, right? So the Jupiter can't help.
Would the mutual reception help mitigate at all between Jupiter and Mercury?
It is a return of virtue. Now it isn't, because obviously Mercury has already separated, but when it wasn't applying opposition, it wasn't applying to a return of virtue, because Jupiter is retrograde. Now, this one would have been a return of virtue with fitness, because the Mercury is angular, but the Mercury in this case is in fall. So the fitness wouldn't be all that great.
Would Jupiter also exacerbate the problem or increase the problem just because?
I think so. I think Jupiter would make them look at the details in the wrong place, or look at the wrong details, or pay attention to the wrong things. We were talking about this yesterday.
Mercury is also, I forget if it's combust or under the beams, but either way, it's being also harmed by the sun. So you have the sun under the beams, plus the connection with Jupiter, plus it's in fall, and it being on the midheaven kind of just highlights it. So
the waywardness.
It makes sense that is a core problem of this person.
Yes. So it's the waywardness. So it's really not about dreams at all, is it? Although the ruler of the third is there, if we want to look at the third house as dreams. It's not really about dreams. It's about this person not being grounded at all, in my opinion. Notice that the moon is also ruled by the Jupiter. So this Jupiter isn't grounded at all. It should be, it's in Virgo, but Mercury is in Pisces. So it can't help to ground it. Even the Saturn, Venus, all this Mars, Venus, and Saturn in Aquarius. I've got Mars and Venus in Aquarius. I'm not a grounded. I've always had problems being grounded, and always had problems being embodied. In my opinion, Aquarius has problems with embodiment often, or challenges with embodiment. This person, in my opinion, I bet they probably even have problems with feeling embodied, with being able to identify with themselves as a physical body. So it doesn't look like, from my opinion, it doesn't look like, I mean, they might end up, although if we looked at the 9th house as representing divination and prophecy and dreams that are prophetic, it would point that there's possible strength in that area, right? Saturn's there with the benefic and another malefic, but Saturn's there, the ruler of the 9th is there with Venus. They're both hugging the cusp. Right, so that would maybe point to the third, I think it's the third triplicity ruler that rules that stuff. So it would be Mercury, Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, right? So that would bring us to the Jupiter. Venus is besieged. Okay, yes, indeed she is. Venus is besieged by this. Venus is besieged by the Saturn and the Mars. Excellent. So let's see who the ruler of the part of fortune is, because if the ruler of the part of fortune is Venus, then we've got another understanding of what's going on. So moon is, it's daytime, so it's sun to moon, back 90 degrees, back 90 degrees, so it's 1 degree of Pisces. So the sun, Mercury is on the part of fortune. The Jupiter is the ruler of the part of fortune. That's what this problem is, this Jupiter Mercury stuff. So, hey, so Stephanie, last week you asked about whether you thought my mutual reception was helpful.
I was thinking exactly of your chart when I noticed this too.
Right, and this is exactly like my chart, except that in my chart the Mercury is, except it's Sagittarius Gemini, and in my chart Mercury is applying and it's angular, and it's on the 1st and 7th.
And there's no
think
retrogradation either, correct?
Jupiter's retrograde.
Oh, and
Jupiter
yours too.
is retrograde.
I see.
So this, but here's the thing, Mercury rules the tongue. Right? Mercury rules the tongue. And when Jupiter is in Gemini, Mercury gets its tongue rulership back. You know, it gets it back, its tongue and hands and arm rulership. Right? And so when it's in Sagittarius, that's not necessarily such a problem. But when we come to Pisces, Mercury puts itself into a mute sign. And Jupiter isn't really that helpful. I mean, I'm wondering why this isn't as helpful as mine was. Now, on the personal, I bet it probably is. I bet you this person is very, very imaginative, very dreamy, might doodle and draw a little bit. You know, probably super imaginative, might be a little bit, might be interested in erotic subjects or not. But you know, other than that, but this person should be very philosophical, very imaginative, maybe profound and deep, you know, but scattered and not committed to reality, not committed to reality. And the moon, you know, this is the armchair traveler.
Maybe they'd make a great poet or fantasy writer or something like that.
Yeah, like a fantasy writer would be great. Musician, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Moon is applying to the next application is to the Mars. So, which is with the Venus, right? So that's a possibility. I mean, now, you know, Venus, Mars like this tends to be sexual scandal, and the Saturn is there, so that can put a kibosh on it. But it could be a religious scandal, a religious sexual scandal that this person has gone through. But at the same time, like I said, the Saturn could also put the kibosh on it by, you know, making this person more conservative and not so kind of passionate, the Mars Venus. But even me with the Mars Venus in Aquarius, I've had, you know, I've had plenty of fun. So yeah, so this I think that what do we need to tell them? So what's our advice? We figured out what we think the problem is. What's our advice?
I would say that they should lead into their strengths, maybe, because it's not like they're going to be able to really change that Mercury and Pisces, but maybe emphasize those strengths of potentially being a creative writer or an imaginative thinker or somebody who's poetic and emotional, like finding a way to channel that constructively. I think that's what the kind of advice I would give.
I like that, and I would not amend that, but include that. I think that they have to really, really commit to being on Earth and into tangible reality. Mercury, as the ruler of Virgo, Mercury is called the ruler of earthly things. Mercury is called the ruler of earthly things, and so here Mercury is abnegating his responsibility as ruler of earthly things. And so, like you say, she can't be different, or he can't be different, right? They can't be different, but they can channel that thing to Earth. Right now, they're not. Right now, they're straddling the dream world. They got 1 foot in the dream world, 1 foot in the real world, right? They've got to put both feet in the real world and be themselves and be full and figure out how to be fully themselves in the real world.
I like that a lot.
Anybody else more comments?
Saturn is what grounds us, but Saturn and Aquarius wouldn't be much help, right?
No. Well, I mean, Jupiter and Virgo could ground it, right? Planets, I mean, Earth signs can ground, right?
So maybe
Saturn,
through some type of work,
yeah.
like
I
maybe
mean,
it's through their work, they could be more
Saturn can
grounded.
I think this person grinds through their mind, grounds through their mind, like I did, like I've done most of my life. Like that's how I get grounded, is go into my head. So I think that this person grounds themselves in their head, which is the problem, which is why one foot's in another reality. And so they have to put it, especially because now that we realize that the ruler of the part of, what was the part of fortune, was ruled by Jupiter, wasn't it? Right. So now that we know that Jupiter rules the part of fortune and rules the Lord of the ascendant, Jupiter is in Virgo. Virgo is the sign of Mercury's exaltation and rulership. And it's really what defines him as the ruler of earthly things. See, this is where, so Stephanie, this is where this person has been given an escape hatch. The escape hatch is the Virgo. Virgo is the escape hatch in this chart. Because,
makes sense.
right? Because that's basically everything I've been saying, is put your feet on terra firma. Don't stop abnegating, stop letting Mercury abnegate his responsibility as the ruler of earthly things. Come to Earth and do your thing on Earth. Which is basically what you were saying. I just added that extra part to it.
Yeah, I really like that.
So fantastic. All right, great. So we've got good stuff to tell this person when I write to them. Does this person need a relation to ground them? Because of maybe that moon in the 7th, is that why you were thinking that? I think, if anything, that I don't think that relationships ground them, because I think that all of the relationships stimulate them mentally. Right. I think that the mental stimulation is part of the problem. That they need to, like, they might need to do ceramics or something like that. They might need to garden or do ceramics. They might need to do something that is that's getting their hands in dirt. You know, they need to, you know, always walk on the beach without their shoes on, right? Because their feet need to touch the ground. There needs to be a realization of that. Opposition of Jupiter Mercury. I see a need for integration with the opposition with the moon in 7th. What opposition was that? You mean the opposition, and you mean the opposition plus the moon in the 7th? I think that, to be honest, like I said, I think that actually relationships are part of the problem, because this person needs stimulus, a mental stimulus, intellectual stimulus. They need it. They absolutely must have it. And if they're anything like me with this Venus, Mars, and 7th, conversation is a substitute for sex. Like I can get so intimate with you in conversation that you would think that we were fucking. Right. And this person as well, I'm sure they can probably do that same thing. Right. And I remember when my friend was the one who was like, you have sex, you just do it through conversation. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was really kind of true. So I would think that so I don't think that relationships can help them. I think that what helps them is committing to Earth, which they haven't done. Ooh, yuck, twin flame. Flight attendant. I thought we'd do one, maybe one of our last ones would be looking for a career related one, right? Everybody wants to know about career. Am I more suited to a logical career or an artistic career? So remembering what we learned from Bonatti, that when we look for the career, we don't look for the ruler of the 10th house, right? What he tends to say is, first of all, what's in the first house? Anything in the first house? Okay, nothing there. What's in the 10th house? Bam, here's Saturn in the 10th. Then he would say, okay, what's in if there's nothing in the 10th, what's in the 7th? And bam, look, there's Jupiter and the Sun in the 7th. And then he would say, well, what does the moon applying to? Or what's the, if there aren't any planets in those, what's in the fourth, right? The moon's in the fourth. So this is pointing to Saturn, isn't it? This is pointing to Saturn. And look at how the Saturn is also on the part of fortune. So it's pointing to Jupiter and Saturn. Note that Jupiter and Saturn are both angular. So Jupiter's in the seventh, working with, so that would be people one-on-one, buying and selling, right? Merchants and sales, that's the seventh house. Working with the public, that's the seventh house. And then there's Saturn. Now, Saturn traditionally has all of the shitty jobs that you don't want, like a tanner, or a garbage man, those kinds of things. But also Saturn is government. Someone was just asking on Reddit earlier, what Aquarius as rulership by Saturn represented. And it represents how we organize our civic reality, right? It's our civic reality, civic duties, civic structures, and civic or conventions, right? Traditions, conventions. All of that stuff is Saturn as the ruler of Aquarius, or Aquarius as ruled by Saturn. Something like etiquette, what spoon goes where, that's Saturn in Libra. What you say when, what you wear to what you put, what fork you use for salad, that's Saturn in Libra. What you tend to see with politicians, general managers at hotels, Saturn in Libra. Venus in Capricorn. So there's this tendency for this, there's this formality that Saturn brings. So there's something about formality, something formal, so something structured and formal. And maybe, so since it's with the water, it could be what? It could be maybe working for fish and wildlife, or working for marine biologists, or some kind of water conservation or something like that. Saturn rules what? The 8th and the 9th. Saturn rules the 8th of death. Saturn is also the natural significator for death. This person could be a mortician, right? Pisces, liquids. Morticians use all kinds of liquids in order to preserve the bodies. And look, Venus is in the 8th, beautification of the dead. So I think this person might be a fantastic mortician. What else? What other things would you look at? I'll find the Bonatti, and it'll give us an idea of what we should be looking for as well. Or maybe I'll just do it from mine. Somebody was going to say something? Exploring the 10th house. I actually did a reading for someone with almost the exact same chart, same Gemini rising. What was different about the chart?
So the only difference really was the moon and a few degree placements, and I'm trying to remember all the details. But for this person, which obviously it could be different for this specific native, but it was the ruler of their first that kind of indicated their career. So in this instance, I'm trying to go back and look at my notes. So this person, let's see, she did a lot of work advocating for resources for children who were in unsanitary and unsafe environments. And she also did some grief counseling for these kids. And I thought that made a lot of sense with Mercury in the 8th, particularly when it came to like getting resources for these kids, because she did a lot of fundraising, and then also with the grief counseling. But then the kid related stuff, for her, she had Venus in a slightly earlier degree, but I thought that had to do with maybe the ruler of the 5th and the 8th. And then Mars maybe indicating the unsafe environments, and it also ruling the 6th nearby the ruler of the 1st.
And where was the part of fortune in that other chart?
I cannot remember. I'm trying to, I don't have the chart in front of me. I just have my notes.
Oh, I see. Okay,
afterwards.
you seem to have such a good memory of it. So because that would also that might show us why children.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, but I don't know. Actually, let me
Because
see if I
this-
have it saved in my computer somewhere.
Because this doesn't really point to children. But while you're doing that, let's go to my notes about what Bonatti says about finding profession. Okay, so what he would have said was look first at the ascendant, as I said, and if there's nobody there, then look at the 10th, and we saw that Saturn is there, so generally we would stop. If nothing's there, then we look at the 7th, and note how he says once you get away from the 10th house, then they're lazy. Then how much they put into their work is less. And then with the 4th, and they're even lazier. Then if then they're so maybe they don't mean lazy, but maybe they mean less ambitious, right? Because the 1st and the 10th would be representing well. So with Saturn ruler of the 8th and 9th managing someone else's money, they would also make their money through other people's resources. With ruler of the 2nd in the 8th. Oh, very nice. Ruler of the 2nd with the 8th in the 8th. Let's look at that. Ruler of the 2nd is the moon. Ruler of the 8th and the 10th. Yes, ruler of the 2nd is in the 4th. Wait, what were you saying? Or are you saying the ruler of the 2nd from the 8th? That Saturn, so other people's money already works, right, as the 8th house, as the 8th house. So I think just even Saturn in the 8th, that is a good point. This person, Saturn is also boring shit like banking, but not the money counting part, so it could be the lending part. So maybe this person might be interested in going into, mortgages or lending for mortgages, remembering that also Saturn has to do with things on the ground and under the ground. And the fact that the moon is in the 4th house, this person also could be interested in real estate, right? Because Saturn represents things on the ground and under the ground. And where's the Mercury? The Mercury is in the 7th. Mercury's in Capricorn, and Saturn sign. So I bet real estate is what this person might really find themselves gravitating towards. And maybe it might also, but also possibly law. Law is a possibility, don't you think? With the Jupiter in the 7th in his own sign, even though he's combust. So let's look and see what Bonatti has to say. My connection keeps skipping out. No problem. Okay, so if you find one of the planets in one of them, you could take what is signified by the native's work from it, right? Which is what we've been kind of looking at. The things signified by it are weaker than the aforesaid houses. If there were no planets in the angles, look to the ruler of the angles. We have planets in angles. Then look even at the planet to which the moon is first joined. The other thing about this chart, in my opinion, is that note that Saturn is the ruler of the 9th house. Saturn is the ruler of the 9th house, and Jupiter represents bishops and priests. We've already established that Jupiter and Saturn are the main significators for this person could be involved, or you could work for a church, or could end up becoming like a priest or a minister of sorts, which would make sense if with having 8th house and the 10th, other people's money. Right? So maybe this person could be, and with Sun with the Jupiter, maybe a televangelist. I'm being a little funny, but seriously, if there is a sincere religious belief in this chart, then definitely this could probably be a minister. And with Saturn as kind of the significator, and with Saturn on the part of fortune as well, the ruler of the 9th is on the part of fortune. The ruler of the 8th is on the part of fortune. I think this person's going to be attracted to austere things, like something austere, like being a mortician working with the dead, something austere like being a minister, or something like that. Or you might even be like a very austere yoga teacher or something like that, because yoga, of course, falls under the 9th house as well. So so I'm looking at something like that. What would be some Jupiter things? Would this person, we mentioned lawyer, right? So the law, the 10th house in the law, Jupiter is the law. The 10th house is the law. Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, and Pisces is on the cusp of the 10th. Saturn is in the 9th. So,
I like that,
ruler of the ninth, you think law, like some form of law would be good, like a lawyer?
especially because it's in the seventh house, and that would like point to the whole like
Litigations, yes.
interpersonal relationship thing that you have, like the standoff,
Yes, like the face-to-face thing, yes.
and then the sun representing the law and the legal system or the laws because of its it has its join the ninth house with Jupiter.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this person could even be a financial advisor, because look at how the moon is the ruler of the second. I think that they, once again, real estate, I think that they could be like an investment advisor for real estate. I was looking at the moon trining all that stuff in Capricorn. I think they feel good dealing with other people's money. They enjoy dealing with, so moon is going to the trine of the Venus. But they're giving each other detriment. These things matter. We were just looking at this yesterday, and there was a horary chart we were looking at, and we were looking at a square between the sun and Mars, and and I said, hey, but this square isn't useful. It's happening between Virgo and Gemini, and so there's no reception of any kind. But this is similar. This is not a useful trine. So what's that about? The moon to Venus, it's a trine, it's easy, but what's it making easy? What's it making that doesn't necessarily work for these planets that's not easy? So that's money, my money, and Venus is what? What I enjoy. What else? Taurus. My friend, my self-undoing. So moon is applying to the self-undoing. And it's Venus. But there may be a difference between having a job and being good at your job. Indeed. Although I don't think that the Venus and the moon have anything to do with the job. They might have to do more with how we act. Obviously anything that has to do with the moon has to deal with how we act. I think, if anything, this moon Venus might be making this person materialistic and venal and covetous of other people's things. Right? The Venus is in the moon is applying to the planet in the eighth. That's other people's possessions and things. That's Venus. This would be the kind of, you get these kind of investment bankers who, like, they love hobnobbing. They love hobnobbing with these really rich business people, and they also are green with envy, with jealousy, with how much money they have. And I think it would be that this would be that kind of person. But I think that this is a materialistic person. Note we've got another Pisces Virgo opposition, very close to the one we just had. It's so funny how the charts that I choose always have some kind of thematic thing running through them. There's always continuity running through them. We've got the Venus, we've got this Virgo Pisces, we've had 1 degree of Gemini, we've got things in Gemini, we've had things at 20-something degrees of Sagittarius. We've been so many of these things we keep kind of revisiting. Cap, assembly stellium in the 8th status matters a lot to this. I would say so. Pisces Virgo oppositions make me think of themes of compassionate service and helping others. Yes. Okay. Saturn in 10th will make them work very hard to create a legacy, especially with the night chart. This person could probably go very high in their career. Upon looking further in my notes, fundraising and grief counseling was what the person emphasized most, more than children. She also married a pastor, Jupiter the 7th. Fascinating. Interesting. She married a pastor. So we might see something like that. This person, although I think this person might become one, right? Mercury is the ruler of the ascendant. With Mars, Mercury, Mars, that's spicy. This person, okay, so once again, this issue with the covetousness, the venality of Venus, the Mercury Mars might make them do something, might make them transgress. This is what I mean about this trine. This moon Venus trine should be really good, but moon is giving Venus fall. Venus is giving moon detriment. Moon is the ruler of the second. That's my shit. That's my stuff. That's my substance. That's my money. Right? And then Venus is what I enjoy. And like you said, the trine to that would mean maybe they enjoy dealing with each other's money, but then having Mercury and Mars so close together means maybe they enjoy it a little too much. Be very careful, person, with this chart. How do we feel about the Mars-Saturn sextile? Well, it's pushing nature, right? So it's pushing from the 8th to the 10th and pushing the 8th and 9th to the 10th and the 11th. I like it. Mars is exalted. So it's two things. Mars is pushing nature and power because he's pushing Saturn's nature to himself, and then he's pushing his power to Saturn as an exalted planet. I think that gives it a lot of power. I think that's another reason for why this chart can probably climb very high. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And I think if anything, it is about other people's money. And I do also think that they have to be very careful because I think that unlawful behavior is possible. And there might be some in the family already. Note that the Mercury is the ruler of the 4th and the moon is there. So they may have been raised by a mother, and there might be a little bit of criminality in the family already. Are Mercury-Mars aspects sometimes associated with thievery? Yes, they are. That's why I'm saying it. I think I remember reading that in some of my Ben Dykes books, but I'm not sure. Yes, it's called the highway robber, especially the conjunction. And so, yeah, be careful. I mean, I've seen it often, and it shows that we were just looking at it today in another chart, today in a Vedic chart, and it showed up as activism instead of criminality. But it can certainly show up. It can, shall we say, controversy. It can show up as controversy, lawlessness, transgression, and at its worst, straight up criminality. Straight up thievery, highways, which is why with this connection, note that the Mercury Mars is ruling this Venus. I mean, this moon, and ruling the 4th house. Right. So the 4th house is the house of secrets. So money, Mercury is money. Mars is exalted. So that might help it, is that the Mars is exalted. So he might not be swerved. And let's see, the Saturn's in Pisces, that can be very equivocal. But Mars in the Capricorn might not find himself swerved to go, might stay with the straight and narrow, might find himself swerving to do something fucked up. But that is a possibility in this chart. I think that this person should work in government, should work in finance, should work in real estate, investment, dealing with real estate investment, which would mean securities law or tax law, securities law, certainly law, financial analysis, financial investment analysis, investment broker or investment advisor, working with the public. Jupiter combust problematic. I mean, it's going to be problematic. It's going to be problematic for marriage and for the career, right? So there'll probably be struggles in the career, difficulties getting there, or rather difficulties when we're there. I still think that this chart can go relatively high, career-wise, but we can see that maybe they might feel overshadowed by something else. So the rule of the part of fortune is in the 10th from the part of fortune in his own sign, but he is combusted. So it also might mean that like the boss takes some of their stuff for their own. This person could be good at fighting for resources on behalf of others, exalted Mars. So I definitely agree that they'd be good at law. Mercury Mars in general makes me think of lawyers. Yes. And especially lawyers are good at what? Bending the law. It's an interpretation, finding the interpretation of the law that best suits them, right? Or their client. So yes, so there's even that aspect of criminality that can come with being a lawyer. With the moon Saturn opposition, does the person have the emotional fortitude to withstand the pressures of career? Very interesting. Interesting question. What do we think? Wonderful question. What do we think? Well, what do you think, Shanice? I don't think so. I think, and maybe that's what the Jupiter has to do with burnout. Remember, combustion is burnout. I think that maybe, like, I think you're right. I think what we might see is that this person is very, very serious about work, very, very meticulous, very methodical, very, very, very dedicated, very committed to the work thing, and might let the work, what did Joan Sutherland say? The career took over. I think this person, and Mars in Capricorn tends to be workaholic in nature. The Saturn in the ascent in the 10th, all totally serious when it comes to work, right? So I think that there might be a workaholism or a complete absorption in work. Like this is the person that comes in early and leaves late, doesn't take a holiday, that the manager that says, why can't you be more like this person when the other people want to leave? I think that we probably have that person, and that makes them susceptible to burnout. That's, I think, the combustion. Good catch. Good catch there. Wonderful. Anybody else, anything? Are the problems of combustion still applicable? Yes. Yes, they are. Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's what mixed significatorship is about. Mixed significate, it means, a Jupiter can be in his own sign or exalted, but be in the 12th house, right? So that means that on some level, on one level, he's in good condition, another level, he's fucked up, right? Same thing with this. He's in good condition, but yet he's not. So there's a mixed signification we have to figure out. The person is asking about art versus logical, right? Yeah, so what do we think? What's it all pointing to? Logical. We can see why they asked about art, because the Venus rules the 5th.
Antoine,
Yeah.
I was just wondering, okay, so I know that you don't typically look at, I don't think you do anyway, look at North Node, South Node like this, but if we look at South Node as where we feel comfortable with that South Node in Aries, ruled by Mars, that's exalted. This person feels very good with maybe difficult things that take a long time. That's their natural energy, but North Node going towards this Libra, which is Venus also in Capricorn, but being in the 5th house, things that have to do with creativity and children and stuff like that. And maybe they don't want to go there, them asking about art versus logical. And maybe with an art career, they might have a dependency on a partner being in the 8th house with the Venus in the 8th house that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Except we know, here's the thing. Everything about that would be correct, except that we know whenever anybody says, should I do a logical or an art thing, they want to do the art thing. They don't want to do the logic. Nobody wants to do a regular job. That's the whole thing about the whole Gen Z. Nobody wants to do these fucked up jobs, and nor should we want to. Everybody's quiet. There's no such thing as quiet quitting. Jobs suck, and the money sucks that we get paid, right? So in my opinion, we know that they want to be artistic. What they're really asking is, will I succeed at it? That's what all these people are asking. Whenever they say, oh, hey, do you see me doing some kind of artistic thing? Or do you see me doing blah, blah, blah? They're saying, do you see me succeeding if I go into the artistic thing? They don't say, do you see, they're not really asking, what kind of career do you see? They're really asking, am I going to be successful at doing the thing that I want to do? That's what this person is asking too. But they're I'm sorry, say it again.
No, it's just interesting because Venus is separating from the sextile of Saturn and Mars is applying to it. And then you have this South Node in Aries, North Node in Libra, which is interesting because I feel like it has implications as to the difficulty of this venture, as well as like the financial rewards that come from it. Like, that's what I'm picking up on.
But note that the 11th house is our future hopes and wishes, right? So it's not like it's moving away from friends and towards children, right? It's really, I mean, this whole question is an 11th house question. What should I be doing in my future? What should I be envisioning for my future? Should I be envisioning a logical thing, or should I be envisioning an artistic thing for my future? So they're coming from the 11th house with this question. They're not coming from, they're not really asking. I mean, the 5th house is about is the creative side. So in that respect, you do have the notes right there. They're saying, okay, here's my dilemma. The 11th house is my dilemma. Should I include the 5th house? Should
they not include? Should they not include the 5th house? Because it is like,
it's not what's
what
being
is the
pointed
significance of the North Node? What is being pointed to?
What's being pointed to for career is Saturn and Jupiter. Right? Remember, we've already discussed that what you're here to do does not have anything often to do with what you do for a living. Right? We've already made that. If you came to the thing that I did 2 Thursdays ago, where we talked about soul and soul, 2 Thursdays ago on Clubhouse, we talked about soul and soul purpose, and we looked at the nodes versus the moon and Mercury, the 3 powers of the soul technique that we've been using. We looked at it really extensively. No. Well, just because what you're here to do, there's what you're here to do, and then there's here what you're to do what you're here to do for a living. They're not always together. They're not always the same thing. So maybe, yes, indeed, the nodes are pointing to what they're here to do, right? Actually, in my opinion, the better thing is the moon and Mercury. So the moon is pointing to Mercury, and Mercury is pointing to Saturn. But Mercury is also with moon and with Mars and Venus. Another Mars-Venus conjunction, although wide. Right, so even in this chart, even looking at it that way, it's really pointing mostly to Saturn.
Do you think that in this chart, Saturn could be separating them from that artistic side, like the pressures of Saturn, that need to create legacy and appease that logical side and ambitious side would be separating them from that art? Like they feel like they are mutually exclusive, like those two?
No, I think that this person thinks that talent means artistic talent. See, that's the other thing, is when we think about talent, we usually think about artistic talent, but there's all kinds of talents. People are talented at all kinds of things. This person has a talent, doesn't necessarily have an artistic talent. What kind of talent does this person have, looking at their chart?
For being analytical, being able to, I would say that moon in Virgo could produce somebody who is very good at, and with Capricorn, Venus and Mars, somebody who is very methodical, organized. They could take something and organize it and sift through it and extract what they need to get, which is more logical.
Exactly. Control, logic, strategy, rising in my condition, lifting my boat.
Research maybe
Venus is ruler of the 12th, maybe with Mars, maybe not so much. I mean, Saturn is likes to be alone, but yeah, maybe not. I don't see that necessarily, even though Mercury is pretty, Mercury and Capricorn. I see it less with research and more being able to handle the details nobody else wants to look at, to deal with.
That's when I say research, I'm thinking about like uncovering stuff that people don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, maybe, because of the 8th house stuff could be that. But it could also be spreadsheet upon spreadsheet of stuff that has to do with an estate. Like, I don't see, like, I see this person looks like a really high level bean counter of some sort, or like I said, or an investment advisor or something like that. But I think that when this person is thinking about creative, this person is thinking about a talent, but they don't know that their talent is something else. They don't know that, like some people don't know that, like I didn't know that my greatest talent was adaptability. I thought it was music. Right? Because when we think about talents, we think about creative endeavors, but not necessarily. And so in this particular case, I think that this person is confused about what they're talented at. And they're really talented at the administrative.
Is that because the part of fortune is in Pisces?
No,
Said they're confused?
I think because the Gemini rising, Mercury in Capricorn, Mars exalted in Capricorn, Moon in Virgo, Saturn on the part of fortune, nothing to do with Pisces. Everything else, everything practical. All these things are happening in the such practical signs, except for the Jupiter Sun and the Saturn.
I have kind of
I
an
was, no, I was asking like when you said that they were confused about their career. Or
Oh,
confused about their
confused.
talent.
Oh,
Confused
got
about their
it, got it.
talent.
Got it. No, yeah, that was my misunderstanding. Maybe, you know, the double-bodied aspect of Pisces might be affecting them. You know, maybe. I mean, I think that is that they want somebody to just tell them it's okay to go into the creative thing when they really know they shouldn't. That's what I think.
Another way I think the sun combustion Jupiter could play out is like you said, they want to do art. And with Sun and Jupiter comes together, you could be like overzealous about what you can accomplish. And so if they did go and do art, they could probably go like full force and it may or may not be successful.
Pan out. Exactly. I don't think that this chart is necessarily pointing to music or art personally, but I could be wrong. You know, I mean, it could, I mean, there are all kinds of charts. I agree. I think this person is stressed and burnt out, and fifth house feels like less pressure. Yes, I agree. Now, what you just read something, you said something before. What about Saturn conjunct part of fortune? Saturn is logical, but Pisces isn't. The Saturn, in my opinion, Saturn's ruling the eighth, and it's really about the house rulership of Saturn, right? Which is why I thought the ninth house rulership of Saturn made sense if this person decided to go into religion, right? And especially because things that are religious are austere and ascetic, right? And Saturn is austere, what we take away, you know, things of that nature. But also it's, you know, it's any kind of institution, right? So it could be working for a church, it could be working for the government. That's what I really think. I wasn't really so much thinking about Pisces as a sign, you know, Pisces as a sign besides what we've said before, mostly more as Pisces as the gateway for Jupiter. And once again, noting that the Jupiter's in the 10th from the part of fortune. So this person can get to the top of their career, in my opinion, or to the top of their industry, whatever they decide. Be recognized kind of at the height of their industry. Let's go ahead and stop there. I think that's a good place.
I have one quick thing to add, or one
Sure.
kind of alternative perspective, but I wonder if this person asks if they're going to be more inclined to logic or art or being artistic. But that Saturn and Pisces, I wonder if it could be both. Like, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. I say that as someone who has that natally, and by trade, I'm a graphic designer. And the definition of design is form, which is art, mixing with function, which is logic. So I wonder if that Saturn and Pisces could maybe even be the combination of those two things.
You know, that's a great point. I also have Saturn and Pisces right on this person's part of fortune. And and I actually, the two applying aspects in my chart are Mercury Jupiter opposition and Sun Saturn sextile. And I actually believe that the Sun Saturn sextile is what makes me was one of the things that makes me such a good astrologer, is that because the Sun is the ruler of the ninth. And so it's bringing the ninth house to the Saturn. And that, you know, the Saturn makes me very methodical and slow, and you know, and can deal with difficult texts and things of that nature. So but also I think the Sun Saturn gives me an illumination of sorts as well. So I would agree with you. I think that, yes, I think it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. I think that's a very important point, to be honest. Thank you. All right. Well, that's where we're going to stop.